Hello, and welcome to the House of Law. Tonight, we begin with a soft breath at the edge of reflection, a gentle path into the quiet, where the hush of evening settles over a world longing for connection. This is a journey into the heart of something deeply human, loneliness, not as a burden, but as a quiet thread woven through us all. I'm so glad you're here with me in this stillness. If you find peace in this space, feel free to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who may need a place to rest. Let us begin. There is a hush in the air when the world begins to slow. The wind drifts softer against the windows. The sun slips beneath the horizon without a sound. In that first pause of dusk, there is something familiar, a stillness that touches something ancient within us. It is here that the shape of loneliness begins to show, not as a loud or painful thing, but as a soft echo, a reminder. We are made to be with others, but even in company, loneliness can find us. It is not a flaw, nor a weakness. Listen to the hush between the trees, and felt, from time to time, that ache of absence, a longing for someone who wasn't there, a thread reaching out. That thread still lives inside each of us, tugging now and then, asking us to look inward, to listen more kindly to ourselves. Loneliness is not always about being alone. It is, in some quiet way, a part of what it means to be human. Long before the bustle of our modern lives, long before cities and screens and crowded rooms, people gathered around fires. It can visit in a room full of voices, or drift in on the silence after laughter fades. But it has companions. It shares its space with thoughtfulness, with memory, with longing. And in that quiet company, something gentle can grow. As we sit with these softer feelings, we begin to notice the calm beneath them, the subtle rhythm of breath, the warmth of stillness. There is a kind of peace found only in solitude, a restfulness that rises when there's no rush to go anywhere, to be anyone else. We can allow our minds to wander, tracing old memories or imagining gentle tomorrows. There is no need to push loneliness away too quickly. Let it sit beside us like an old friend, silent maybe, but not unwelcome. Because in understanding it, we begin to see how it can guide us back toward connection, back toward ourselves, but roots that go deep. We search for resonance, for reflection, for another soul to say, I feel that too. And if you've ever felt alone in your feelings, know this, you are not the only one. Loneliness may feel isolating, but it is among the most shared of human emotions, we. Each carry it in some form. It invites us to reach out, to notice small kindnesses, to listen longer and hold space for others. And in doing so, we find solace, not only in being seen, but in giving others the same gift. As the evening deepens outside our windows, and shadows grow longer across the floor, we rest here together, in thought, in presence. You are not alone in this stillness. The need for others is part of our fabric. The desire to belong, to be seen, to share. These are not temporary cravings. Some quietly, some with sorrow, but also, at times, with grace. The hush of night carries us all. Let go of the weight for a while. This quiet presence, this shared moment of peace, you are part of something soft and human and real. Let the night settle. Let the quiet continue. Let the story sleep in your thoughts until we pick up the thread again. B. Picture the earliest humans, long before cities, before writing, before memory could be shaped into story. In that vast stretch of time, when the world felt larger than comprehension, and danger could linger behind every tree, belonging was not just comfort, it was survival. To be alone in those days was to be exposed to predators, hunger, and the cold indifference of nature. And so, over thousands of generations, our ancestors who stayed close to others, who formed bonds, shared food, and joined in hunting and watching the horizon together, they survived. Allow yourself to simply be just you and the gentle quiet that wraps around you like a blanket. There is nowhere you need to be right now, no one you need to become. Just drift and breathe and know that this too is connection. They passed on more than just fire and language. They passed on the feeling, that deep ache when connection fades, loneliness. It is not a flaw in our being. In tribal life, spaces were shared. Tasks were always communal. Fires drew everyone close at night. No one had the luxury of solitude as we know it today, and no one had to carry it long. From birth to old age, every person was woven into a fabric of kin, of custom, of shared memory. Each gesture, each gaze or touch reinforced a sense of being known. To stray from that, even briefly, could feel like drifting into shadows. Our minds learned to detect disconnection, just as they learned to detect pain. And the feeling of social isolation, that quiet emptiness, was designed to move us back to others. It is a signal, whispered from the oldest parts of our minds, reminding us that we are safest when we are seen, when we are part of something greater than ourselves. These responses, the churn in the stomach, the tension in the chest, they are not defects, but messages. Even now, the brain reacts to loneliness in ways similar to physical discomfort. The same regions stir, coordinates are traced, hormones shift, because long ago, being alone felt like a wound, and the body, wanting to survive, still tries to heal it. The amygdala, deep in the brain, interprets threats, and in isolation, it awakens. The cortisol rises, heartbeat quickens. Not to harm us, but to keep us alert, to compel us back toward the tribe. It is our oldest instinct, nudging us gently, back toward connection, back toward belonging. Ow! Our journey continues, deep within the hidden corridors of the human mind. To understand what happens in the brain when we feel lonely, we first have to look back in time. To when the human story was still being carved by instinct and survival. Our ancestors lived in close-knit groups, small communities bound by necessity, by protection, by shared labor, and shared stories. But in the modern world, things have changed. We can live among millions and still feel unseen. We build walls, both of brick and thought. Yet, the ancient signals remain. That quiet ache, that call in the silence. The mind, ever adaptable, evolved to treat separation from the group as a signal, a warning, a whisper urging the wanderer to return to the fold. Over time, this soft warning became rooted in our biology. Modern loneliness may feel emotional or fleeting, but in truth, it is. Much older, much deeper. In those early days, to be alone was dangerous. It stripped a person of security, of warmth, of watchful eyes under starlit canopies. It springs from structures carved into the brain, shaped by generations before us. Certain chemicals help the social mind flourish. One of them is oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin encourages connection. It is released when we hold someone's hand, or share eye contact, or simply sit with someone in silence. It consoles, it calms, and it binds us to others with invisible threads of trust and affection. Another chemical companion is dopamine. It rewards our interactions, a quiet pleasure that arises when we laugh with a friend or receive a warm reply. These substances do not just influence mood, they shape motivation, guiding us gently toward one another. When we feel included, valued, close to someone, oxytocin flows freely, and dopamine lights subtle pathways of joy. But in loneliness, these flows slow. The sense of reward fades, and we become more vigilant, a little more uncertain, a mind on alert. Just as it was for those who drifted too far from the firelight, loneliness is not a failing, nor a flaw. It is a signal, designed to draw us back into connection, to nudge us gently back toward the safety of others. Even when alone, our brain remembers togetherness, and even in silence it reaches, a quiet, instinctual yearning to return, to the voices, the glances, the warmth of shared space. It is a call written softly in our cells, one that has echoed across time, through villages and forests, across deserts and oceans, beneath stars and through long winters, a part of the social brain, still gently listening, still longing, still waiting for belonging to return. Inside the quiet chamber of the mind, loneliness takes root in subtle ways. At first glance, solitude may seem gentle, even peaceful in small doses. But when loneliness lingers, the body begins to respond, not just with feelings, but with shifts deep within its systems. In times of perceived isolation, studies have shown that the amygdala becomes more active, its watchfulness grows sharper, and its signals to the body become more frequent. To the brain, loneliness can feel like a danger, an evolutionary trigger that we are separated from our group. The amygdala, a small, almond-shaped structure nestled in the brain. It helps us detect threats, regulate emotions, and form memories related to fear, vulnerable, exposed. This sense of risk, even imagined, activates the body's stress response. The hormone most often involved is cortisol. Cortisol is not the enemy. It strengthens our ability to react in emergencies, sharpens our focus, mobilizes energy. But loneliness stretches that system. Sickness and inflammation, more likely and harder to overcome. A body too long on alert starts to wear down. At night, this restless activation does not fade. Sleep, that soothing balm, becomes harder to hold. For some, falling asleep takes longer. For others, it's the staying asleep that becomes difficult. It leaves the body in a low simmer of tension, a quiet, unending readiness. As cortisol stays elevated over time, the effects begin to ripple outward. Blood pressure may rise, appetite patterns may shift, and the immune system begins to lose its balance. Defenses weaken. Even when rest arrives, it may be fragmented, light, shallow, lingering at the surface like a tide afraid to go deep. This changes the architecture of sleep itself. Less time in the restorative stages, more frequent awakenings. The dreams, often less peaceful too. Without quality sleep, a new cycle begins. Fatigue the next day, greater emotional sensitivity, and a renewed sense of disconnection. These are the messages of a body trying to adapt, trying to send signals through patterns and pauses, calling back to something ancient. To be alone for too long is not just felt in the heart, but in the whisper of every cell. And in each breath that passes between moments of wakefulness and slumber, loneliness is not simply a feeling of separation. It is a weight the body carries, even when the mind tries to ignore it. Studies have shown the link between loneliness and physical health runs deep and quiet. When we spend long stretches of time alone, our hearts do something curious. They begin to work harder, not out of energy or motion, but out of strain. Stress hormones like cortisol rise slowly like smoke. And elevated cortisol can stiffen blood vessels, increase blood pressure, and invite the early footsteps of heart disease. It can feel like the body is remembering something. The mind tries to forget. We are meant to be together. This is not about crowds or noise, just the simple presence of another, but through the nervous system as reassurance. This is safe. This is known. Without touch, the body enters a state of quiet watchfulness. As if always bracing, never quite resting. And as the heart bears the weight of isolation, the mind begins to feel it too. Cognitive decline is not an abrupt collapse, but a slow unraveling. When deep connection disappears, our brains receive less stimulation, less newness, fewer surprises. The neurons, those quiet messengers, need novelty to stay sharp. They thrive on small challenges, moments of laughter, shared memories. Without them, thought begins to wander more slowly. Memories take longer to surface. Time folds in on itself. But just as the body remembers absence, the occasional conversation, a familiar voice, touch, too, is more potent than it seems. Something as light as the brush of a hand is processed not just through skin. Warmth, soft tones of the human voice. Even the vibrations of sound alone can change our chemistry. Low, calm frequencies have been shown to reduce heart rate, to coax the breath into deeper patterns, to ease tension stored silently in the muscles. Music, humming, the sound of rain, even a kind word from a distance. These can help the body feel held, even when alone. Sleep also returns with these sensations. Better sleep, deeper dreams, a nervous system that no longer needs to guard so closely. So the body may remember sorrow. It also remembers comfort. There are ways we soothe the nervous system, invite it to rest again. Gentle touch. But it remembers peace as well, and peace is patient. It settles in slowly, one calming moment at a time. Let it come, quietly, and know that even now, your body is listening. When we look into the animal world, we often search for reflections of ourselves, little glimpses of emotion, of language, of love. And while their ways may differ from our own, the desire to belong, to touch, to be understood, is shared far and wide. Among elephants, those gentle beings of memory and grace, social bonds are woven through generations. Herds stay close, not just by instinct, but by deep, active care. Matriarchs lead their families through landscapes old and familiar, guiding the young and tending to the old. They touch often, their trunks winding gently around each other in greeting, in comfort, in reassurance. There are stories told of elephants grieving their dead, standing for hours, sometimes days, beside the remains of a fallen one, quiet sentinels of remembrance. Such moments remind us that empathy is not uniquely human. In the water, dolphins move as one, their pods ever shifting yet firmly entwined. They call to each other with clicks and whistles, signatures as unique as names. They play, they teach, they console the sick and protect their young. Sometimes they bring gifts from the sea floor, tokens of curiosity or friendship. These are creatures that speak in frequencies we have only begun to understand, lines of connection flowing unseen beneath the waves. And in the air above, birds form bonds in ways both tender and intricate. Among songbirds, monogamous pairs share not just nests, but entire rhythms of life. They take turns in caring for the young, bringing food, shielding with wing and song. Some species stay faithful year after year, finding the same partner even after long migrations apart. Even crows, with their sharp minds and ancient memories, show a deep loyalty to family and flock. Young crows often stay with their parents well past fledging, learning the secrets of their world, sharing in the work of care. Across jungle, ocean, and sky, life persists. Through partnership, not merely for survival, but for comfort and togetherness. The architecture of connection is soft, enduring, and found in the smallest gestures. A nudge of the trunk, a shared song across the trees, a dive through shimmering waters, side by side. We are all, in some way, made to cherish company, and the natural world in all. Its quiet marvels has been practicing this art for far longer than we know. As I walk gently into this next chapter, in our earliest moments, long before we understand language, shapes, or sounds, we learn love from the way we are held, the way we are seen. Parental bonding is more than affection. It is the shaping of safety. Our caregivers become the world, and how that world responds to us teaches the foundation of all future emotion, the call of a mate remembered through seasons and storm. I find myself thinking about the very beginning of connection, when all we know of the world is warm arms and soft voices. This early trust, this secure link, is what researchers have come to call a secure base. Just like a small animal first learning to navigate its surroundings, we return again and again to that familiar place, where heartbeats are slow and voices are known. Through the comfort of this reliable presence, we gather the courage to explore. We feel, with our words, that if we falter, we are not alone. This secure base becomes the soft ground from which empathy grows. As infants, our brains already carry the seeds for shared emotion. Among these are something remarkable: mirror neurons, special cells that react not only when we perform an action, but when we observe someone else doing the same. Imagine watching a smile spread across a face and feeling your own lips move in kind. It is no wonder that animals too, especially mammals with complex social groups, display remarkable signs of empathy. Studies have shown how young primates return to comfort one another, and dogs, sensing human sadness, often approach with lowered heads and quiet eyes. Something ancient and gentle flows through these responses, a bridge of feeling, formed not by thought, but by presence. These mirrored notions dance between faces, long before spoken language arrives. When a child hears a puppy whimper, they may instinctively reach out, not to fix, but to connect. That small act is empathy in motion. The bonds we form with animals in childhood often reflect the tender exchanges we experience from our earliest caregivers. Pets become companions in our emotional journeys. They do not require explanations, only nearness. A child whispering to a sleeping cat, or crying softly into the warm side of a loyal dog, learns without words that emotion seeks response. This exchange, slow, unscripted, and without condition, becomes a kind of rhythm. It tells us, I see you, I feel with you, even when you do not speak. Animals, especially in those early years, help us refine the vocabulary of empathy. They offer silence, acceptance, and presence, qualities that begin shaping how we relate to other living beings from the very start. Our mirror neurons do not seek accuracy. They seek closeness. They long to synchronize with others, even when the others has paws, or claws, or feathers. Empathy begins not with great gestures, but with that small pause, when we notice someone else's feeling, and allow it to settle within us. Children and animals often do this best. Their connections are not filtered through words or reason, but through felt experience. So often, it is in the quiet companionship of an animal that a child first feels understood. In that still moment, between a hand resting on fur and breath shared in slumber, an unspoken promise is made. You are not alone. And from that, a lifelong thread begins, weaving the tapestry of empathy. Friendship begins in the smallest places, under tree canopies, in sandbox corners, through whispered secrets shared beneath the covers. It all starts early, in the simple joys of play. One child reaches out, another takes their hand, and the world becomes shared. When we are young, emotions are fresh, joy and sadness are felt without filter. Through play, we learn where those feelings belong. A blanket becomes a castle, a cardboard box takes us to the stars. Side by side, we pretend. These imagined adventures are real enough, as real as the comfort of a friend's laughter, as steady as their voice when the day feels strange. In this rich forest of make-believe, our emotional roots extend deep. We feel anger, we feel kindness. We argue, then forgive. Through this, we grow strong. Friendship teaches us how to care, not just about our own heart, but the one beating nearby. When a tower made of blocks tumbles down, two small hands rebuild it together. When a scraped knee stings, one offers a hug or a tiny, grubby bandage to make it better. Early bonds don't always last forever, but they leave echoes. The first time someone chooses us, to run alongside, to share their snacks, to sit next to at lunch, that moment makes a mark inside. A quiet imprint of being seen. And so much of that starts with the warmth of a trusted caregiver. Sometimes, a toddler will glance up mid-play just to see if someone is watching. A parent, a grandparent, a kind teacher nearby. Their gaze says, Are you with me? Do I matter here? And the soft smile in return says yes. Yes, you do. When a child feels safe, fully safe, their imagination unfurls like a sail. They begin to explore other people's feelings. They hear a friend's tears and wonder why they're crying. They offer a toy in response. This gentle flicker of empathy. Caregivers create the soil. Friendships are the sun and rain. Together they grow something tender, something lasting. It is here, in giggles and secret handshakes, in long summer afternoons and silly traditions, that emotional development quietly unfolds. Not in worksheets or checklists, but in couch forts and sleepovers. When a friend listens, when they notice another's sadness or wait for them to catch up, these are sparks of emotional understanding. Sparks that light us from within. And there are tears too, the misunderstandings, the tugs on a toy that ends in hurt feelings, and learning to say sorry, to mean it, to forgive. The safety of early friendships teaches us it's okay to feel, to be happy, then grumpy, then okay again. The presence of another gives us courage to express, to learn, to stay. Within that safety, we find our pattern. We begin to recognize what kindness feels like, what it means to be chosen, to be thought of in someone else's world. And in this way, we slowly learn to hold space not only for others, but also for ourselves. Some of us remember these early bonds only as shadows, names half forgotten, faces blurred by time, but the feeling remains. The warmth of being accepted, just as we were, messy hair, scraped knees, and all. The quiet joy of being met where we stood, in the rain, in the playground, in every corner of childhood. So as you breathe slow and drift gently now, perhaps let your heart wander there for a moment, to the first laughter shared, the first friend made, the first bond that told you, you belong. In the quiet folds of time, we have always gathered, around fires, in markets, at temples, and beneath the trees, something in us responds to others. The presence of a familiar face, the echo of shared laughter, or the steady nod of someone who understands. This is the foundation of what some call the village effect. A sense, not always tied to geography, but to relationships, to the ongoing rhythm of human contact. When people regularly interact with others in meaningful ways, their emotional resilience tends to grow stronger. Immune systems respond more favorably, and even longevity extends. In small villages, this was once the natural shape of life. Neighbors who checked in, elders who passed on knowledge, and children who were known by name. Modern life, with its wide connections and scattered roots, can sometimes miss this circle of belonging. But even in today's world, we can draw our own villages closer. There is a number, proposed by anthropologist Robin Dunbar, that may hold part of the answer. Roughly 150 people is the average number of stable social relationships that the human brain seems capable of managing. But within that wider circle, there are smaller, more intimate rings. At the center, perhaps just 5 people, those we trust most deeply. Then, expanding outward to 15, and then 50, as emotional closeness gradually diffuses. These circles are not fixed, and they breathe with time. People move nearer or drift based on shared experiences and the tides of life. Still, understanding them gives us a gentle framework, a way to nurture the closeness we crave. Maintaining emotional safety depends less on how many connections we have, and more on the depth of those we keep. Through frequent conversation, casual greetings, acts of kindness, and shared understanding, we reinforce the bonds within our personal rings. In every group, there are invisible threads that pull people together: values, stories, rituals, and language. They remind us of who we are, not in isolation, but in relation to others. And that is often where safety blossoms, not the safety of walls or locks, but the safety that comes from knowing you can be seen, heard, and understood. Like sitting together at the end of the day, when the only light comes from the hearth and words are few, but presence is everything. Belonging is not loud. It is quiet and steady and kind, and it lives in the circles we keep close. We live in a time where the glow of screens has replaced the flicker of firelight, where the hum of traffic soaks the air more than the gentle voices of familiar neighbors. Little by little, the world grew taller and wider and more crowded, yet lonelier than before. Cities expanded, buildings climbed into the sky, and faces multiplied in the streets. These things create a shared identity, something as simple as preparing meals together, or laughing at familiar jokes, or repeating a tradition each season. These are small seeds of belonging. Communities, when tended with care, can become gentle sanctuaries, yet those faces remained strangers, passing in silence behind earbuds and tinted windows. Urban life promises connection and opportunity, but often trades away softness and slow moments. Conversation once happened on porches, along garden paths, in small shops, but now interaction is more likely to arrive as a message bubble or a blinking notification. The technology carries our voices across the world, but flattens them as it does. A text message lacks warmth, the tilt of a head, the pause that carries concern. We gather in group chats, comment sections, digital forums, and photo threads. In towering apartments, we sit just feet apart from one another, yet feel worlds away. Invisible walls made of schedules and screens keep us separate. The human contact, real, physical presence, is becoming rare. Always together, yet not quite close. But beyond the images and emojis, we remain behind walls, sharing only pieces, not full-hearted presence. Online, there are so many voices, yet rarely the stillness needed to be heard. We scroll through updates, thousands of them, gliding over the surface of 100. Lives, too, are. These exchanges are fast, efficient, and sometimes entertaining, but they rarely offer the gentle reassurance of being seen, truly seen. A carefully curated profile can create the illusion of friendship, but how often do we pause, reach out with intention, or sit quietly beside someone, even in silence? With every new connection at our fingertips, it may seem impossible to feel alone. But digital nearness does not always ease the ache of solitude. Sometimes it deepens it. We may find ourselves surrounded by messages, yet starving for meaning. Munter, flooded with contact, yet untouched by care. This is the paradox of our time. The more connected we become, the harder it can be to feel truly known, Technology is not the enemy. It is simply a mirror, reflecting our longings. It offers potential and promise, but it does not replace presence. It gives us eyes across the planet, but we still need quiet conversations, laughter around a table, or simple silence shared on a quiet walk. There are moments when only a hand resting gently on our shoulder can say what words and pixels cannot. We must be gentle with ourselves as we navigate this world of blinking lights and endless chatter. Loneliness in a connected world is not failure. It asks us to return, to slow down, to tend to one another not only with messages, but with meaning. Bow. To look up from screens and into eyes. Bow. To listen not just with words, but with silence. And to remember that even in a world of constant contact, the human heart still craves closeness that cannot be coded. Just presence, soft and near, W-E. It is a quiet calling, reminding us of our need for depth and rhythm and stillness. The quiet corners of our homes often tell more than the words we speak. In earlier times, homes were filled with layers of life. Grandparents, parents, children, sometimes even cousins, all sharing space under the same roof. Now, homes have grown quieter, family units smaller, a rise in single-family dwellings, more bedrooms, fewer voices. It is not just the structure of the house that has changed, but the way we live inside it. Urban design encourages independence, but often at the cost of connection. In many places, neighborhoods sprawl wide, each house set apart, space valued over proximity. Within those walls, many live alone. The aging population, once surrounded by family, now often find themselves in solitude. Children move far away for work or school. Grandparents remain, their days growing slower, their rooms growing quieter. Younger people, too, despite constant connection through screens, often report feelings of isolation. A message may arrive, a notification may blink, but the warmth of a shared meal or a gentle voice is harder to find. We are tethered to little glowing rectangles, searching for presence. In a world of absence, there is dignity in living alone, but there can also be distance. And in that space between, loneliness can quietly settle in. Shared family routines, once woven into daily life, have become fragmented. Eat when you are hungry, not when we are all at the table. Schedule your own time, rather than share the evening. Even the idea of quality time has become something to manage, rather than simply fall into. Community structures, too, have shifted. Places of gathering below the surface, a local library, a quiet park bench, a small-town diner, fade or change form. Less common are the spontaneous moments, bumping into neighbors on stoops or porches. Digital connections make it easy to speak, but hard to be present. In the intimacy of solitude, there is peace, but also the quiet ache of being unseen. And yet, we are not meant to be entirely apart. Human beings, even at their quietest, are social in nature. In ancient caves, hands were drawn not alone, but side by side. In thick forests and wide plains, people gathered around fires, not screens. Our ancestors knew the strength of circles, the comfort of being known. Modern life has stretched that circle thin. But, in the gentle flicker of a shared story, in a soft voice heard in the dark, a connection can still be felt. The walls have not closed entirely, only shifted. And where solitude rests, hope can still breathe. This is the hush in which we sleep. And remember, sometimes it takes only a whisper to remind someone they are not alone. Oh, loneliness is not bound by age, yet it wears different faces as we move through life. This early form of loneliness is tender, often unspoken, and tied to our first, deeper understanding of wanting to belong. Children may not have the words for what they feel, but even in the noise of a classroom or among scattered toys, a child can notice absence, a best friend who moved away, a distant parent caught in the whirlwind of their own responsibilities. It's in these gaps that a young heart quietly learns what loneliness feels like. As we step into adolescence, the shape of loneliness shifts. This is the season of identity, of becoming. And in that process, young people often feel like they are the only ones struggling to fit in. Their loneliness might come not from isolation, but from the sense that no one truly sees them. Technology, though it connects us more than ever, often deepens this divide. A teen may have hundreds of online friends, but still feel completely alone in their inner world. Then come the adult years, a time when responsibilities pile up, careers grow, and families take shape. And yet, loneliness walks quietly, alongside, sometimes camouflaged by busyness. In childhood, it might begin as a quiet ache during recess, a moment when a child scans the playground, searching for someone to share time with, but finds only distance. Teens are surrounded by peers. School halls echo with chatter. Yet the feeling can become even more acute. Whether someone is partnered or single, with children or without, loneliness does not discriminate. Life transitions often awaken it. A promotion that requires relocation, a divorce, the birth of a child when support systems are far away. Each change, even happy ones, can dissolve old social patterns, leaving gaps that take time to mend. And still later, we enter elderhood, a time of reflection, of slow mornings, and longer memories. It creeps in after a move to a new city, or during the quiet hours after a long day of work, but also, potentially, a time of deep solitude. Friends may pass on, routines shift, health may limit the ability to move about freely, and family, much as they may care, often lead busy lives of their own. The companionship once found in shared weekly dinners, spontaneous visits, long chats over tea, might fade into more occasional check-ins. It is not unkindness, but the rhythm of life that can cause the older among us to feel unseen. And yet, within all this, lies the quiet power of intergenerational connection. When an elder shares stories with a curious child, when a teen is mentored by someone who remembers what it was like to feel out of place, when adults build bridges across age groups, something old and human is restored. Loneliness shrinks when someone listens. When time is made for presence, there is something deeply settling about knowing that no matter your stage of life, yearning for connection is part of being human. And in seeing that, in accepting that simple truth, we may find, even in our quietest moments, that we are not truly alone. Oh, loneliness has many voices, some soft, some aching, others quiet as snowfall in a forgotten field. When age is not a barrier, but a thread in the woven fabric of our shared experience. It may arrive not with noise, but with an absence. A gentle drawing back of things once familiar, the subtle shift of silence settling between thoughts. Loneliness, in its true form, is not a flaw or failure, but a whisper from within, asking to be heard. I started to see loneliness, not as something pressing in, but rather as something opening up. An invitation to return home, not to a place, but to myself. When we sit quietly, without distraction, loneliness may rise. We might feel it in the spaces between tasks, or just before. Sleep, when the distractions have dissolved and there's only breath. And thought. It feels hollow at first, like standing in a vast room where the echo is the only reply. When I began to meet my own loneliness, I thought it was something to fix, to solve like a puzzle with missing corners. But over time, I learned to listen. And in that listening, but if you stay still long enough, you may begin to notice that the echo is you. This is where mindfulness becomes a gentle companion. It helps me stay present with what is, without judgment, without rushing away. I feel lonely right now, spoken silently or out loud, can change our relationship to the feeling. We are no longer lost in it. We are alongside it, walking like old friends who haven't spoken in some time. Loneliness is not fixed with noise or crowds, though people, too, can be medicine. But first, we meet it as it is, a sensation, a voice longing to be held. And in that space, perhaps, a little softness grows. This is where self-compassion begins, not with grand declarations or trying to be better, but with acceptance, a breath in, a hand resting gently on the heart. I am here, with myself, and that is enough. Solitude is not the absence of love, but a quiet room where love is remembered, where we are not trying to entertain or impress, but just be. In the hush of that silence, we may hear something we forgot we carried. A wish, a memory, a part of us waiting. And each time we return to that quiet and offer kindness to what we find, we build a new home within. Loneliness, then, is not a punishment, but a path, a soft trail back to the center, where we can rest and listen. Again. I take a moment, and I name what I feel. Loneliness, quiet, longing. The naming does not make it heavier, it makes it bearable. Like turning the light on in a dim corner, it brings clarity without force. Just the simple words. Reaching out with intention can be something very small. A gentle nod, a shared glance, a quiet touch on the shoulder. These tiny moments, simple in appearance, are actually profound in effect. In the calm spaces between words, in those delicate gestures, we speak a language deeper than sound. The science behind human connection is subtle and powerful. When we reach toward someone, not for answers, not to fix them, but simply to acknowledge, we offer something rare and precious. Trust begins there, in the smallest of things. A door held open, a hand offered in stillness, a word spoken with care. These actions activate systems within us that crave safety, connection, understanding. Our brains respond gently to cues of care. The hormone oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding chemical, is released when we experience trust and kindness. It brings with it a softening of heart, a sense of openness, and a quiet sense of belonging. In those simple exchanges, the body relaxes. We are no longer preparing to defend, but to receive, and be received in return. When someone reaches toward us with intention, not to rush, not to change, but to witness, a deep breath is shared, and a softening begins. Joy, too, flows through this channel of connection. Shared joy, especially, has a signature within the brain. Laughter, shared moments of delight, gratitude expressed aloud. These build bridges within the nervous system. In moments of shared pleasure, dopamine and serotonin, the messengers of happiness and peace, circulate in greater harmony. We feel uplifted and settled, not because of something big, but because someone was there and chose to be. I hear you. You matter here. To be seen, truly seen, is one of the deepest forms of healing. Because we are social beings, our brains are wired not only to survive, but to connect. And when someone holds space for our presence, allows us to simply be, a quiet recalibration begins. Even in silence, presence is powerful. A small gesture, a ripple of attention, can echo for years. You may not remember the exact words someone spoke, but you will remember how you felt in their presence. You will remember the gentleness of their gaze, the stillness in a moment of need. And in turn, you might find yourself offering that same moment to someone else one day. So when you reach out with intention, remember this: you do not need the perfect words or grand plan. Only a touch of care, a sincere pause, an open heart, and that is often more than enough. A loneliness often wanders the edges of our lives, soft, quiet, and sometimes hard to see. Intentional presence communicates something ineffable. I see you. Connection is never wasted. It moves between us like water through soil, silent, persistent, nourishing in ways we do not always see. It doesn't always come with tears or silence. Sometimes it's found in the space between conversations, in the gap between feeling seen and truly being known. People often speak of loneliness as if one kind soul could take it all away, wipe it clean with a single gesture. But I've learned that loneliness is not solved by one person, not really. Instead, it's softened, slowly unwoven by many gentle threads of care. And that takes time. Each thread is a moment of mutual connection, not just someone giving or someone receiving, but something shared. When we choose to care for each other, not out of obligation, but out of presence, something begins to shift. It's in the morning check-ins, the unremarkable text that asks how the day is going. These small acts, they become rituals. Not rituals in the grand sense, but tiny repetitions of love. A shared cup of tea, a moment of eye contact, the seed of a smile. Over time, these turn into signals of belonging. And it's in these moments that loneliness slowly releases its grip. Another key is vulnerability. To let someone see the gentle ache behind your smile, or hear the tremble of uncertainty in simple words. This isn't weakness, it's a bridge. And when someone walks across that bridge, not to fix you, but to stand beside you, the space between you both shifts. You're not alone in that place anymore. And when you sense that someone trusts you enough to be vulnerable, to open a quiet door in themselves, well, It's an offering of intimacy, a step toward warmth. We often think strength keeps people close. It's in the comfort of a friend, letting silence linger because words aren't always needed. But truly, it is softness that draws near. The rituals of connection aren't always spoken or planned. Some are unspoken agreements, like lighting a candle before a quiet meal, or holding silence while the sun drops below the trees. They do not need grand gestures, just gentle consistency. And bit by bit, a rhythm forms, a sense of shared time and space and meaning. When that happens, we begin to know the difference between being around people and feeling like we belong. True closeness can't be forced by one person alone. It's a dance of little choices. Mutual, willing, real. We offer our care. And if it is met with tenderness, the thread grows stronger. We speak our truth, and in being heard, we hear another's truth back. Connection is built this way, patiently, gently, gently, gently. It's never just about having people in your life. It's about sharing the quiet moments, understanding without needing to explain, and showing up, in whatever small way, again and again. Loneliness begins to lift. Not when someone saves us, but when we all take turns holding the candle and lighting the way for each other. Connections are not quick things. They are grown, like moss on old stone, tenderly and over time. As I continue wandering through the house of law, I find myself drawn to the quiet corners where people have always gathered, not out of duty, but out of care and need and joy. In many cultures, the roots of connection begin in how people live together, side by side, sharing not just space, but life itself. In traditional longhouses of Southeast Asia, families rest beneath the same roof, generations bound in wood and woven palm. Each household is its own, but walls breathe and lean together. Meals are prepared communally, stories whispered through the floorboards, laughter echoing from one end to the other. In Andean villages, tasks are not owned by individuals, but shared as part of a collective spirit called Aini. If you sow your neighbor's field today, they will help raise your walls tomorrow. No need for reward or record, it is understood. In Mongolia's steppes, where the land stretches like ocean, the ger is more than a home. It is a circle of welcome. Doors always face south, not by chance, but to protect the inner spirit from northern winds. When travelers appear, however late, milk tea is offered, stories are exchanged, and no one leaves without warmth to carry. Stories, yes, they play a gentle role here too. Around fires in the Sahel, griots sing the memories of clans. They do not just preserve history, they connect hearts to it, reminding each generation who they are and where they belong. In the Pacific Islands, when fish is roasted by moonlight, the elders take turns speaking in low, lyrical tones. Some tales are cautionary, others light with mischief, all of them tethered to the sea and the soul of the community. And then there are rituals that seem small, but hold mighty presence. In parts of West Africa, a walk into someone's compound is never silent. The visitor claps, again and again, signaling their presence gently. Instead of knocking or calling, they show their respect through rhythm. And the reply, a soft call from within, says, "You are seen, you are welcome, come share what you carry." In Scandinavia, the practice of fika, is more than coffee and cake. It is an invitation to pause, to sit with someone, and simply be. In homes and offices alike, this moment is sacred, a quiet celebration of shared humanity. Even departures are marked with care. These parting gestures do not just honor presence, they cradle it. And in the American Southwest, some Pueblo communities, when guests leave, send little bundles of cornmeal for the road, a reminder that care, like sustenance, is meant to travel with you. What binds all of? These, from tea to tail, from bow to bread, is a shared belief that connection requires tending, just like a fire. In Japan, guests and hosts continue to bow as one walks away, over and over, until distance dulls their sight. So they gather, again and again, not always with purpose, sometimes just with presence. And in this repetition, in these simple, steady acts, community is not built. It is remembered. Art has always had a way of slipping past the gates we build around the heart. It speaks in gestures we do not need to translate. It finds a place to rest within us, even when words fall short. Sometimes, in the quiet hour just before sleep, you might remember a song you haven't heard in years, and without knowing why, your eyes soften. Your whole being slows. There is something in that melody, a texture of memory and warmth. It doesn't explain itself. It simply arrives and lingers. Poetry moves in much the same way. Its rhythm draws us inward. Its metaphors ask us not to solve, but to feel. A single line on a page can open a door to something deeper, something unspoken, but known, something gentle, but powerful. It doesn't ask for permission. When someone writes from the heart, others feel it within their own, even across languages, even across centuries. That is the unseen thread of connection. A message carried not in content, but in presence. The painter with trembling hands, the singer with a quivering voice, the writer with an aching heart, each one is reaching across distance, not to be understood, but to be felt. Music drifts through time this way. It occupies no space, yet it moves through places we do not name. It carries joy and sorrow alike, not as contradictions, but as companions. In some songs, we hear the longing of generations. In others, the simplest expression of peace. And when two people hear the same melody and close their eyes, they are no longer separate. In that moment, they are part of the sane, quiet world. This, too, is the language of the heart. Speaking without words, understanding without explanation. But sometimes, what binds most deeply is not sound at all. There is something healing in shared silence, a kind of presence that does not press or pull, a stillness that simply offers itself. When words have worn thin, when noise feels heavy, silence can be a sanctuary. Two people sitting in silence can be more connected than in hours of conversation. Their breathing slowly synchronizes. Their energies soften. Their hearts rest side by side. In sacred spaces, silence is honored. It clears a space for something older than language, a reverence, a longing, a quiet knowing. Artists often speak of the silence before the first brushstroke, the pause before the opening note, the breath before the pen touches paper. It is not created in noise, but in gentle waiting. As we end this reflection, let your own breath become slow and steady. Perhaps you carry a poem inside without needing to write it. Perhaps a song waits for you in the quiet. And perhaps, in the soft silence now, you are more connected than you know. Loneliness is often thought of as a shadow, something to be avoided or filled, something unsettling. It is in that stillness that something authentic begins to form. But in the quiet hush of solitude, when the world fades to a low murmur, we may begin to discover a kind of gentle wisdom nestled within. When we find ourselves alone, not by accident, but by presence, we start to hear things more clearly, the small voices inside us, the subtle emotional threads we often overlook. It is in these moments that loneliness can become a teacher. It begins slowly, like the settling dust in a quiet room. At first, we ache for company, for warmth beside us. But then, slowly, we begin to see the patterns of our own thoughts, how they come and go, how they reach and long, and how they soften. In that stillness, we start to see others differently too, more patiently, more gently, because when we learn what loneliness feels like within ourselves, we become more aware of how others might be feeling the same. That awareness blooms like a candle quietly lit, not to cast bright light, but just enough to offer comfort. There is a texture to that space, a kind of inner landscape, made up not of noise, but of noticing. When we are lonely, we begin to understand that companionship is not about filling silence, it is about being seen. And so, as strange as it sounds, loneliness can bring us nearer to others. It smooths the sharpness of judgment and replaces it with gentleness, with empathy. Compassion begins to form not only for others, but for the versions of ourselves we meet in solitude. This space we create in solitude is not empty. It is full of listening. Loneliness shows us what it means to be present, not just to people, but to the soft rhythm of being alive. With each quiet moment, we begin to sit more comfortably with uncertainty. We do not need to fill every gap. We can just be. The tired parts, the longing parts, the younger voices within are given time to be heard. When we feel longing, it teaches us that we care, that we seek connection, not as a cure, but as a thread of shared feeling. And once we begin to see that truth in ourselves, we start to recognize it in others. Someone sitting quietly, someone choosing silence, someone walking alone, all may carry that same quiet call. And we may begin to respond, not with answers, but with presence. Loneliness, when we let it settle, teaches us to approach the world with softness. It reminds us of what matters, not grand declarations, but small gestures, moments of attention, a quiet hand resting on a shoulder, a silent understanding between two people without words. These are the gifts loneliness brings. Though it arrives quietly and often uninvited, it does not rush us. It does not push us. Instead, it waits, with a kind of patient wisdom, waiting for us to lean in and listen. So when we find ourselves alone, not distracted, not pulled away, but still within our own company, there is something to be learned, something gentle, something true, something that brings us closer to our hearts and to each other. Even in the quietest moments, something stirs within us. A light echo, a familiar warmth, perhaps a memory of someone once known or someone nearby we have yet to notice fully. The paths we walk may feel separate, winding off into their own distance, but often, unexpectedly, they curve gently back toward one another. Every connection is, in itself, a beginning. No matter how fleeting, each meeting has its own quiet gravity, when hearts are not distracted, just quietly aware. There's a peace in that space that words cannot intrude upon. And even when we're apart, that silence remains, tethering us to something larger, something continuous and calm. The world often rushes forward, but this circle of connection moves differently. It does not push or pull. It waits, watches, and allows. Like the slow spiral of clouds on a windless day, or the curl of tide returning to shore, each movement a promise that we are never truly alone. I think about how many times we unknowingly touch the lives of others. A glance across a room, the subtle smile of passer-by, a small kindness freely given, invisible perhaps, but deeply felt. It's easy to forget such things in the rushing noise of day. But here, in this soft and shadowed space, we can remember again that even without speaking, we return to one another. Over and over. Over. Every story. Passed along, every song remembered, drawing us in with unspoken understandings, shared pauses, and mirrored silences. As I sit with this thought, I remember how stillness, when shared, grows more comforting. You may have felt it too, those silent moments between friends or strangers, but in the stillness shared, two souls agreeing, in silence, to simply be. And it is there, in that quiet understanding, where loneliness gently slips away. You are not alone, and you never were. You have always been part of a circle. A circle that opens whenever hearts are willing. Even now, as you listen, you are gently returning to it, to the familiar hum of connection you've known all along, to the comfort of being held in thought and in spirit. So let the night offer you its peace. Let its hush remind you that your presence matters, that you belong, that the circle of connection in its silent grace is wide enough for us all. They carry echoes of connection, old voices, shared dreams, and the steady beat of belonging. Perhaps this is why rest comes easier in the presence of another. Not in the words exchanged. The quiet has become a friend now, not something to resist, but something to rest inside. Stillness is not a void. It is the gentle container where everything can soften. When we let the silence hold us, we start to feel safe again, as if the world has wrapped us in a cocoon of quiet trust. Breathe in, and let that stillness rest in your chest. Breathe out, and feel yourself falling gently into the calm. Across the echo of distance, across the breath of dusk and thought. Here, in this pause, there is no need for action, only the soft presence of being here, with me and with yourself. I am here, and so are you. And in this shared moment, these quieter spaces between words, we breathe together. Even far apart, we find closeness in rhythm, in the cadence of breath and rest. A community of calm, woven not by touch, but by softness, and by time held slowly. In your own room, with the hush of night around you, you are part of this warmth. Let the connection settle within you, like a memory you don't need to name. Let it rock gently inside you, like a lullaby passed from heart to heart. The story is not in the pages turning, but in the hush between them, in the way the night bends low to tuck you in. Let yourself become dreamlike now, not needing to try, not needing to hold on. You are where you belong, not because of where you are, but because of who you are when you're still. Safe in the room you know, safe in the breath you keep. This final part is not an end, but the beginning of your quietest peace. As you drift now, feel my voice fading gently into the hush of your night. The house of law remains, always here, always soft, always waiting. Sleep now, within the whisper of belonging.